Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey Handem. I'm a principal investor at Acadian Ventures. We're an early-stage fund investing in the new architecture of work. In other words, in pre-seed to Series A startups that are basically building at the intersection of technology and work and human productivity. Before we begin, I just want to say, Sat, I ended up in a rabbit hole over the last few days reading some of your work. And I have to say, you have an incredible ability to turn something extremely abstract into something almost tangible. And so to kick things off, could you give the audience a quick introduction around your multidisciplinary background and how that led you into the world of AGI?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sat. I've got a background as a researcher in neurotech. I then went the startup route, and I built a company in San Francisco. Did that for a couple of years. And after that, I also spent a lot of time investing in startups. So I've always been around technology from different angles. And I really like to think about system and just the world as a whole and civilization. So that's a lot of what I do, actually.
Very cool. Something I found incredibly interesting from your work is that you don't actually see AI or AGI as another technological cycle. You actually see it more as a human translational or like a human growth or development. With that, what do you think we're actually missing? Like, where do you think what are we really missing that has been slowing down the development and the adoption of AI, but also, our readiness for AGI?
I think in terms of slowing down, that's not really the problem. I think things are being deployed and adopted extremely fast. I think most people in the room probably can feel that the world is changing a bit too fast around them compared to what they would be comfortable with, and I think that's a very fair feeling. It's kind of the Pandora's box. I think people are looking very much at the first degree at just like any new technology, like the iPhone or whatever. It's nice. You can build new things. You have a new set of industry. You redefine how you do business, and a lot of opportunities everywhere, basically, for everyone. So obviously, that's the first degree exciting thing. But if you look a bit further than this, there's something a lot more drastic that's happening to the world. And if you go a bit further down the line, I think we're getting to like a very unique inflection point for the entirety of the world, which most business leaders and government and people in general don't really think about or don't acknowledge. And I think that's kind of dangerous given the capability of the technology and the derivative of how fast the technology is moving forward.
That's super interesting. So we're actually going to hold that thought on basically the governments and the large institutions. But I want to take a step back. So there's one of your pieces, I think it's called The World of Fractals. That's one of my favorite ones. This is a complete side story. I'm a big nerd when it comes to fractals. But what I liked is how you're basically describing that reality and knowledge is basically this infinite and complex just web. And ultimately, that has me thinking, well, it's pretty much the same when it comes to AGI, right? And what we're already seeing today is that AI is basically blurring boundaries when it comes to, I don't know, like biology and programming, or even just how we work today, but it still feels very external to us. We prompt it, we interact with AI through a screen. So my question really is, like, at which point do these boundaries merge? Or maybe even my question is twofold, will these boundaries ever really merge? Or will we actually need AI to experience a more complex world? So that's, I guess, like the first part. And then the second question is, does it fully merge? And if it does, what does that look like in your opinion?
Well, if you think from first principle, everything we live and do and see is just physics, so that's the core of everything. We decided to break it down into different categories because it's easier for us to navigate. And before AI, we didn't have, the only flexible glue between everything is basically human. That makes the link between the energy sector and software and agriculture, but they're all very compartmentalized because it's easier to think about this. But now AI is basically like a glue. So, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there's no link between satellites and drug discovery. It was a completely different industry. But now they're actually extremely related because a lot of the compute happening for AI is going to be in space, and a lot of the drug development is going to come from this. And AI is acting as a glue to every single industry because it's a very flexible technology. And so it's kind of merging everything in one. But I think on top of merging everything, it's also slowly pushing humans out of the loop of all of this because it doesn't really need humans in the long term. I think it's only in the short term that there's this kind of golden age where you can use AI to build company, but then it quickly turned into a world where human thinking is very marginal compared to like what AI thinking can do.
Absolutely. And another notion that's quite interesting that you also mentioned in your work is that humans, I think you labeled it as like we're signal repeaters. And ultimately, how we feel, how we act, how we behave is data that's being used to train these AI models. Basically, that has me thinking that the models that are being trained today, if they're trained based on human actions, the alignment isn't a technical problem, right? It's actually a humanization problem. So how do we really solve that? How do we solve for that complexity? And what are we missing today that will bring AGI sooner rather than later? Because if we're training AI based on human behavior and we're actually looking at it from an external standpoint and looking at it from a technical problem, we're not really solving the AGI issue, if that makes any sense.
I don't think you need much more than what we have right now to get to AGI. I think everything is pretty much here. We just need compute. We don't even need data that much anymore because the AI can just generate its own data, and that's what it's doing. So I think the rate of improvement is known at this point, and we know that it's basically a 5 years timeline before it's just better than us at everything. I also think that it doesn't feel as strong right now to the world because the robotics is not there. I think we can expect that within about 8 years, we're going to have roughly, I think, 1 billion robots out there that should be roughly as capable as humans. And I think that's going to probably make people like realize much more like how much of a civilizational change it is, because people need to see something physical to really like realize this. So I really don't think we need anything more. It's literally just scaling the compute, which is why the main thing that everyone is doing is to build more data center, because that's all that's left. That's the last piece of the puzzle. And then we should get to something that's basically better than us and everything. And I think we also, predicting AGI is not science fiction. You just have to believe in straight line. Like if you look at the graph, it's pretty easy. Like the capability, every time you increase the compute by a certain amount, increase the capability by a certain amount. And this straight line has been going on for now like almost 14 years. And it keeps going in a very straight direction. So, it's more like you would disprove that this continues rather than the other way around at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so compute, but also what you mentioned earlier with regards to governments and large institutions, I feel like everyone in this room, especially if you're sitting here, you're interested in AI, you're interested in AGI, you want to see, where this go, how quickly we'll get there. I feel like there is an element of trust and maybe misunderstanding as to how to scale this up within these institutions. Based on your experience, what do you think these governments and large institutions are missing?
To scale, you mean?
To scale. Or to accept the future that we're entering.
I think the problem is like when everyone has to build a model of the world, and then they think of the world through this model, and something kind of crystallized in their model, because if everything is a moving variable, it's too hard to think about your life. If you don't take something as ground truth, you would just be in chaos all the time. So that creates model with which people see the world, with some truism in the model, like the fact that, for example, people have to work, the fact that humans are the only intelligence that we know in the universe, and there's a bunch of other facts that exist that you build your model of the world. But suddenly, from one day to another, a bunch of the things that were crystallized in people's mind have changed. They're not true anymore. And I think that's why we're seeing such a big struggle from especially the political class and the business leader to adapt their thinking to this, because it doesn't fit into the original model with which you've seen the world. And it's very rare that you have, in human history, that you have to do such a sharp change in how you see the world in such a short amount of time. And that's why politicians are taking forever, because they don't have the mental tools to think about this new world, for which the dynamics are very different. And obviously one of the main things is just that the way to see work is completely different if you expect. So you're going to have intelligence and robotics that surpasses human within less than a decade. And I don't think they're mentally equipped to do that right now, which is the main problem. The discussion are all kind of off, like they're talking about the next 1-2 years when, we are seeing a cataclysmic shift over the next 5 to 7 years, which is problematic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of my last questions, and maybe we'll leave 5 minutes for the audience to ask any questions that they may have. What do you think is the butterfly effect? Like, what do you think, let's say, in the next 10 years, we're going to look back on and we're going to be like, that was actually what caused this?
You mean the AI transition?
Exactly, yeah. If there is anything.
I don't think there's a specific thing. I think AI is, if you look at how it happened, is kind of dumb. We basically just figured out that we need to stop trying to do a very clever algorithmic, and we just need to aggressively scale and let a pretty simple system just learn on its own, and then that just kept working, and then we kept doing it, and that's what we've been doing for almost like 15 years now. And so I think there's no single event at all that created this. I think it was bound to happen that with this level of compute capability since the 90s and this knowledge of the brain, we would slowly get into a world where this is possible, and that would happen at some point. I really don't think there's a specific. I think it's a natural point to converge to create intelligence when you get to this level of technology.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have 5 minutes. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Yes, the gentleman in front.
You mentioned that there's that the leaders, Yeah. You mentioned that the leaders lack the mental tools, right, to understand the speed and the amount of change right now. Until they catch up, there's a bit of time frame that there's overlap with the speed of change and that the leaders haven't caught up. What do you think happens? What do you think will happen in that overlap period?
That's a very good question. I think in the next 1 to 3 years, we're going to see a jump to relatively high 2-digit percentage of unemployment in most of the West. It's probably going to start with the bottom of the pyramid. I think is going to go up the stack slowly. So companies are going to remove the bottom, which we're already starting to see. And then there's going to be lower middle management, and then upper middle management, and then the C class, and then the CEO, when you ultimately have an entire entities are just AI, and it's just slowly going to go up the stack. The first layer of the stack is going to be gone in the next 1 to 3 years. So we're going to have like this jump in unemployment that's probably going to be a wake-up call for all the politicians and business leaders, because they're going to be faced with reality. And this is not discussed right now, which is kind of absurd, but I think it's coming. I think the next thing we're seeing after this is that around 4 years, we're going to start to see the scaling of robotics. And robotics are humanoid. They have pretty much the intelligence of a human and can do anything a human can do except 24/7 and faster. And this is going to be another shock after the rise in unemployment, which is going to come with a 2 years delay. And at this point, I think the world will be pretty woken up to this. But again, woken up with one step behind, because people would be worrying now in 5 years or 4 years around jobs and what to do around jobs. But this is not the main problem, because there are other much bigger problems that come with it. For example, once you have a super intelligence, it becomes super easy to create the bioweapons. Some guy in Australia, I think about 6 months ago, he had a dog, and the dog had cancer. And he was really sad that the dog had cancer. He's not a biologist or anything, but he decided he was going to vibe code a cure for the cancer of his dog. So he just talked to Claude and got a sample from the cancer manually with just a knife, sent it to a lab, sampled it. Then with Claude, he created a vaccine for his own dog on his own, like just vibe coded a vaccine, gave it to the dog, and it fixed a big part of the cancer. So that's great, but the other side of the coin is that you can also vibe code a bioweapon the exact same way. And I don't think government understand the ramification of this, and I think this is like only one of the many things that come with superintelligence, which is why like all the discussions seem a bit off, because people are talking about, like what you see like 1 meter in front of you, but when like if you look 100 meters further, there is like much bigger things that are coming. And then I think within the next 8 to 10 years, we will see a complete civilizational shift. Like it's kind of a make or break. Either we transition to a world where we figured out how to make a universal basic income or some system where work is not compulsory, or we're going to have a lot of chaos, I think, because humans are only competitive for another few years, and then we need a new system, basically. So I think it's going to be, like, it can lead to something wonderful, I think, if well done, but I think it needs to be intentional, because there are a lot of risks coming with this transition. And right now, people need to be understanding better what we're facing, which is not like a new iPhone. It's very different than like a new technology in this sense.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. I'm curious to find out whether you're hopeful for the future or not.
I'm actually really hopeful. I think there's a good chance that things go well. But, if you think pragmatically and you think there's 90% chance that things go extremely well and that basically we don't have to work, a lot of the problem that we're facing can be solved with technology, a lot of the disease that we know can be solved with technology, then in this scenario, it's 90% chance of happening. There's not much point thinking about this, because if it goes well, it goes well. We'd rather decrease the 10% chance that everything is destroyed, because even if it's low, 10 is still big enough that you care. And even if this was 3%, it's still big enough that why would you focus on the other side, because the other side is already really good. I don't think you can actually put probabilities on what will happen. I think it's probably going to be more bumpy than people expect. But I just think it's better to approach it in a realistic manner, and be thoughtful about both the good and the bad, because it's not the type of technology where you can be blindly optimistic. When we developed nuclear weapons, we didn't just blindly say, oh, this is not going to be a problem, and just throw them in the world. We were like, okay, this can be dangerous, maybe we should build some system around this. And we didn't get a nuclear war because of this. I think this is the closest equivalent, but multiplied by 1 million, basically, I think, AI. So we should probably do the same thing, not just throw it out there and be like, oh, it's going to be fine. It can be fine, but we need to think a bit about how to do it. And I think this starts with kind of burning a lot of how people think about the world and redefining it from first principles, because the really fundamental things shifted. We're not the only intelligence in the universe anymore. It's basically the equivalent of having alien that came to Earth. And if alien came to Earth, we wouldn't be like, oh, what cool business can I build with them? We'll be like, what the fuck do we do now? And that's kind of how we should be thinking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and thank you, Sat. Please, everyone, give it up.